Okay, so what's going on? I want to talk about the Xbox Series S because I've been playing it quite a lot recently, and I gotta say I'm sort of impressed with how this tiny cereal box system actually performs because it's kind of flippin' impressive. Now, I've personally been playing games going as far back as the Super Nintendo and the N64 and the PS1 and Dreamcast and all that. So yes, my knees and my back hurt by now. And over the years, I've noticed a lot of people, including myself, frankly, have really just sort of started losing sight of focusing on what makes gaming itself incredible and more so focusing on optimization, graphics, and frame rates versus gaming itself. Now, that isn't to say all those things aren't incredible, because they flippin' are. I love fidelity, I love all the frames, and I've reviewed some of the best tech that gets us all those things. But as I've gotten older, it's kind of weird, but I've sort of just fallen back in love with just the actual, I don't know, activity of gaming itself versus chasing, frames and fidelity. And another thing that's probably not relatable to pretty much anybody clicking this video, but I have a bit of a soft spot for this specific console, the Series S, because I became a dad 5 years ago, as corny as that might sound. Now, at that time, I literally just assumed becoming a new dad, you can't play video games, you don't have time for that, you gotta be in dad mode and all that stuff. Don't say that, that's bullshit. All my gamer dads out there, I hope you're still gaming. Don't quit gaming just because you became a dad. But instead of being a miserable prick, my wife told me just try and get a Xbox or something, and I did. Now, this one at the time was the most affordable one because I didn't know if I wanted to commit to it. I didn't want to drop a bunch of money on the PlayStation Series X at the time. So I got the Series S, and the Series S specifically made me fall back in love with gaming entirely, console gaming more so. Now, for reference, I've always been a bit of a PC gamer for the last 15 years or so, since 2008 or 2009. I've been a PC gamer, and I've sort of fallen in love with the customization, the fidelity, the frame rates being higher, all the stuff that comes along with PC gaming. And I personally sort of just assumed if I can't have that, I can't game. Now, with all that being said, it's 2026, and as far as this console goes, it's not going to be as impressive as when it first launched in 2020 or 2021, but at the price point of about $250 now, and you can find it for less than that if you get it used or refurbished or whatever, but this thing can give you a lot of games at 1440p at up to 120 hertz. Now, of course, everybody's going to prefer 4K and higher frame rates and all that, including myself, and I absolutely love that on my Series X and PS5 and so on, but for anybody just getting into gaming, whether that be competitive or casually, the Xbox Series S ends up being an absolutely incredible option, yes, even in 2026. One of the weird things too is that despite me personally having some of the best gaming tech available to me, like my Beast-Ass RTX 4090 PC and my PS5 Pro, and yes, the Series X, I still found an incredible experience playing on my Series S, despite it being objectively way worse than all of those things. Now, the main thing that sticks out to me with the Series S is that it's not really trying to compete with all those other high-end consoles per se, and I'm not even sure this thing's actually better than my Switch 2 at this point, but I can't say, considering the size and the price of this console, it ends up being an incredible experience, and I'm happy that there is a smaller, more affordable option available, especially now where gaming as a hobby has never been more expensive. Now, for reference on how I typically play my games, at least, I'm the guy who plays a ton of competitive online games, and up until this last year or so, I truly spent more time in menus optimizing my games on PC versus actually flipping playing them and stuff. And for the first time in a long while, because of my time spent on gaming consoles specifically, I'm just finding a better experience simply turning on my console and gaming. And I'm not sure if that's just me, but for some reason when it comes down to console gaming compared to something like PC gaming, I just find it more relaxing. And I think that's because of the couch and console experience, or otherwise maybe just the controller experience in general, because I play in my desk setup a ton as well. I don't know, after spending 10 or 14 hours a day in my desk using a mouse and keyboard, whether it be for my accounting day job or working on a YouTube video, I just love using a controller to just, turn off my brain and play some flippin' video games. And just to be objectively blunt about it, this isn't going to be better than all the other systems that are out there, but it still does just give a good experience, and I appreciate that. Now, in terms of how games actually look on here, yeah, 1440p isn't going to look as good as something like 4K. And if you're coming from being used to something like 4K, yeah, you sort of notice that the image is definitely softer, especially because a lot of these games are probably upscaled from 720p or 1080p, who knows. But yeah, sure, some of the games looked soft when you're playing on it, but then you sort of don't notice it, if that makes any sense. And this is probably a hot take, but if a game can't pull you in off of its storytelling and it's just sort of leaning into graphics alone, it's probably a pretty shitty game. Some of the best games I've played in the last year haven't been the most graphically intense games on this planet. So Just play a good flipping game, you'll have a good time. And coming from, the PC competitive background, what I've been playing recently on here has been a good mix of Call of Duty and Marvel Rivals, which has been pretty sick to play with my homies, sparingly, if I'm completely honest. As you get into like your 30s and stuff, it gets harder and harder to actually wrangle a bunch of dudes to actually play video games. But when you do, it sure is magical. A couple things to say though is that this thing is far from perfect, of course, because one of the things I don't like here is probably one of the reasons it's cheaper in the first place is that there's no sort of disk drive on here. Over the last year or so, I really started getting into collecting and using physical media. So typically you need some sort of disk drive for that. So for myself, I collect a lot of vinyl records. When I go to the library is sick, by the way. It's practically Blockbusters at this point. But on my Series X and my PS5, I would rent a game. And actually, literally today, I'm picking up Old Country, Mafia Old Country or whatever from my PlayStation 5 to rent that for free. And I can't do that sort of thing on my Series X. But yeah, while you can't really do that on the Series S, I can say Gamepass exists. And I have a love-hate relationship with Gamepass because I canceled it a while back because of the price increases. I just couldn't justify it. And the new CEO comes along and makes Xbox great again, I guess. And the price came down to a point where I can sort of justify it, whether or not it's for a month or two or whatever. And Game Pass is just one of those things where I wouldn't say it's a necessity for the Series S, but it can improve the experience you have on the Series S. For me, at least, one of the things I can't help but appreciate is just the sheer volume of games on here that you can actually just try, and if it's trash, you literally just stop playing it or whatever. And this is huge when it comes down to playing games with my kids because they like to try a bunch of different options without having to actually commit to them, which is nice. And of course, nothing's stopping you from buying your games digitally. I have a mix of a physical and digital library when it comes down to my Series X and my PS5, but you can just buy your games digitally and download them to your console whenever you want. But for Game Pass specifically, it's all depending on, what games you're playing, how many games you're playing, and how much value you personally get from it. For example, I loved Game Pass for, getting a couple months out of the new Call of Duty every year, but Call of Duty's not in Game Pass going forward, at least on the next launch. So something to be mindful of is whether or not you care for that specific game. But there's a lot of other day one releases. I think Forza 6 might be on there, for example. It might not, I actually don't know, but definitely take a look. For now, at least, I'm still kind of torn if I like Game Pass, but for now, I'm having a good time with it and I'm finding value in it. If you guys have any good suggestions right now of a game on Game Pass, I'd love to know because I'm trying to find a game I can just hop into and lose myself. Now quickly, I do want to give a huge thanks to Genspark AI for sponsoring this portion of today's video. You might have recently seen their Super Bowl ad since they are Silicon Valley's first AI agent unicorn, hitting a massive $250 million annual run rate in the first 12 months. Genspark AI is an all-in-one AI subscription that does give you access to a bunch of different models all at once alongside various AI related tools. But what makes Genspark AI a little bit more unique versus traditional AI is that it not only helps you think through or automate busy work, but can actually hire AI to work for you. This does work by using top models like ChatGPT, Claude, and Gemini to deliver actual finished product. For myself, it can either be something as simple as having it sort through all the Game Pass games and recommend me the best Xbox Series S games, or otherwise it can literally deep dive into something like providing me a full complete finished plan to progress my YouTube channel over the next 3 months or so, not to mention absolutely crushing and automating busy work like automatically decluttering my inbox and unsubscribing from spam. You can even go as far as building out full websites, and a little bonus here for new users as well are some credits and access to premium features like deep research, which has probably been my favorite feature so far. So if you do want to get started today, be sure to check the link down below in the video description. And thanks again to Genspark AI for sponsoring this portion of today's video. Now, I want to talk about how portable this console is because it's just something I sort of want to touch on because I move this thing around a ton, literally just because I can. One of the things I love about the Series S, and rather just game consoles in general, is simply how portable they can be alongside the simple plug and play aspect of them. Naturally, of course, a lot of people are just going to throw this into a couch and TV setup, which is an incredible experience, mind you, but there's also times where you might only have a small space like a desk setup, and this still works perfectly well in a monitor setup. In my scenario, again, I love that this thing's the flipping size of a cereal box, and I very frequently have it hooked up to my big badass 4K OLED TV here. I'm mostly only getting 1440p, but this thing has some of the best flipping speakers I've ever heard on a monitor, and I just love playing in my desk setup. Whenever I'm playing something a little bit more competitive, if I want to lock in for Call of Duty or Marvel Rivals or something, I always find I lock in a little bit better at a desk setup, and this is usually my go-to for those type of games. Otherwise, it's always easy to have this in my living room setup or my TV down here, and even a projector, which is a weird one a lot of people don't use, but I use a projector daily. And I can say design-wise, I just really dig how minimal this thing looks, and you can either have this thing vertical or horizontal, and it just simply looks badass. And talking about that projector again, I pretty much have a projector going in my space every single day, whether that be for any sort of music, media, or otherwise just vibing out. And I actually game a good chunk on that projector as well for my Switch too. and my Series S just because they're small. This tiny media gaming hub just works incredibly well as sort of an all-in-one package. Something that I absolutely adore when it comes to consoles. And are you really going to be moving this thing around, flipping everywhere like I do? Probably not, but it does fit in backpacks, which is pretty cool if you need to. One of the things I can honestly just suggest, if you do want to move this thing around, just invest in an extra set of cables. They're actually pretty affordable on Amazon. So yeah, grab yourself a new power cable and an HDMI and you're good to go. One thing by comparison I can say probably isn't going to be as good, at least it's maybe the controller. This, I love it, but it's not as good. But this is just by, comparison to something like the PlayStation 5 DualSense. That controller is absolutely bonkers with the built-in speakers, the microphone, the haptic triggers, the vibration on there is absolutely bonkers. Is the Xbox controller bad? Not really, if I'm completely honest. It just doesn't have all that other stuff that I adore in the DualSense. But the controller itself is still good. It's fine. It gets the job done, and I can't really complain about it. One thing I do love on here is actually, funny enough, I used to not like that it had replaceable batteries, but I do now, 5 years after getting all these consoles, because my PlayStation controllers are like dying in like an hour or two because they've been charged 1,000 times. Whereas the Xbox controller, I just swap out the batteries and I'm good to go. And I actually kind of think I prefer that at this point. Still, they did do a good job with the controller despite how boring it is, I guess. I can't really complain about it. And I still love that it has a headphone jack on the bottom, which works really well when it comes down to, competitive gaming and stuff. And I don't know how they did it between the controller and the system, but there's like zero latency while gaming. So if I am playing something like Call of Duty or Marvel Rivals, there's zero latency that I can realize. So yeah, pretty badass. And a feature that still blows my mind, even 5 or 6 years down the line, is flipping quick resume. In all this time, I've been trying to find a PC equivalent to quick resume, but it is quite actually just magic. Like I could move this console out of my setup here, put it on my TV, and I can still quick resume my games and it'll throw me into the last part I was. If I have like 15-20 minutes to game at the end of the night, I don't want to spend 5 minutes on loading screens, and quick resume is just insane. A little side note is I think because the Xbox Series S has objectively worse graphics than the Series X, quick resume is faster on the Series S. This is something that I've noticed. Separately from that, what I can say as well, I don't have a lot to hate about this console. One of the biggest issues that I personally run into is simply how limited the storage is on the base 512 gig model. This never used to be much an issue for myself when I was a 1 or 2 game type of person, but with the existence of Gamepass, I shred through all the storage on here, and something like Call of Duty alone is like 330 gigs. Activision, y'all gotta do something about that. Once you start considering storage, and even if you want to get the 1 terabyte model of the Series S, the price starts inflating a bit. But yeah, the storage on here, I gotta swap out games and stuff. Otherwise, again, to be honest, I've been leaning into cloud gaming way more than I used to. And having tried cloud gaming over the years, it's gotten remarkably better. Like it's incredibly playable, which is surprising. And I'm using Wi-Fi to play my cloud gaming. So I can't even imagine hardwiring into that. That would be even better. If you're okay with a little bit of latency on some of those games, it's really not that bad. And like I mentioned before, when it comes down to trying all these games with my kids, I pretty much cloud game all of those unless they're like 2 gigs to install or something. Cloud gaming works perfectly for my kids. A lot of the games I play, I've been playing Hades 2, which looks flipping great, mind you. Hades 2, for example, I haven't needed zero latency yet, at least, maybe late game, I don't even know, but it's worked well on Game Pass cloud gaming so far. Now with that, I sort of want to talk about some of the other things I really love about the Series S outside of the whole gaming side of things. And it's honestly the fact that this ends up being an incredible option when it comes down to media and applications. Now, Microsoft ended up doing a good job with this console here, and I think it might be the same with the previous Xbox One at least. But even when you're not gaming, you got all of these applications available to you for media, music, apps, and everything in between. In my case, at least, I'm one of those cinema media douchebags that loves to study movies and study cinematography and learn filmmaking, and I leave letterbox reviews and all that stuff. And I always lean into my consoles for that because they typically give a better media viewing option compared to even like my computer. If I use a browser, for example, the Xboxes, PlayStations, and all that, they give a better experience for me, at least. And they have all the streaming apps I could ever want. Now, the Series X, of course, I can play Blu-rays in there. So for this console, the Series S, I can only stream. But this does have HDR and Dolby Vision support, if that's important to some of you guys. And it does end up being an excellent option when it comes down to watching any sort of movies or content. And again, considering the price of this thing, when you compare this to something like an Apple TV 4K, this is going to be more expensive, but not by much. And this thing is still an entire game console on top of that. So for my media heads out there, or anybody looking for like sort of an all-in-one media entertainment system, they did a damn good job with it. And I can say it's not even like the apps are like hobbled together. They're all full-on native apps. They get updates and they just simply work. Otherwise, of course, for myself, when it comes down to just vibing out, I'm working, if I'm streaming music, I might be using my projector in my basement or have it hooked up to my TV in my living room, and I just play music on here because it simply works. Again, that and their entire UI ends up just being actually pretty decent, if I'm completely honest. And it seems like they've improved this since launch, which I can appreciate, because I didn't really like the UI on launch for this system. But I like the UI now. It's pretty clean. It does the job. And again, the app experience is simply excellent. And then there's the sort of updates this thing has gotten over time that sort of bring this closer to a PC experience. Again, if I'm playing my competitive games, I'm usually hopping on Discord or something. And this has native Discord integration now, which is pretty sweet. And I love that about these consoles, where you're not missing out, I guess, if you were previously a PC player. And of course, there's a whole mix of things that end up making this console as great as it is for me. I might sound like I'm fanboying over this thing. I probably am at this point, but my kids are really getting into games, being that my wife and I are both gamers. And the Series S, particularly recently, at least on Gamepass, has been insane for the games that my kids and I get to sort of enjoy. And I have an irrational amount of, like, I don't know, appreciation for that. And still, as much as I love sort of the whole living room experience, you got everybody around, you're listening to music, playing games, whatever, I can still, again, toss this back into my desk setup. I get my own space, I get my own experience, I can sort of lock in on my games. And I just like having that sort of versatility with a game console specifically. It's not that I can't really set up a PC in my living room and have the same experience, but that's a whole nother thing. And until something like the Steam Machine comes out, I just don't have the energy or probably the knowledge at this point to set up a PC in big gaming mode or whatever it's called. But that's just me. Maybe that's a video for another day. But yeah, as I get a little bit older, I find I have less time to just mess around with settings and stuff and trying to match everything perfectly. And consoles, and in this case, the Series S, I can just sit down and within 15 seconds, I'm playing games. And I can imagine there's probably the slew of PC overlords out there who love to sort of just, you know, shit on console. There might be the PlayStation people who hate on Xbox. I don't care, guys. I have my PC, I've got my PlayStation, I got the Xbox. I just love gaming in general, whatever the hell I'm on. And yeah, I love the frames and fidelity, but at the end of the day, for myself, at least with the time that I have, the part of my life I'm in right now, I just want to sit down and have a good time gaming, and the Series S does that. I honestly don't think the tired-ass parent who just wants to get back into gaming will care to get the latest and greatest, but this is a low-hanging fruit, and it's an easy solution to get back into gaming. It might be the first console somebody picks up for themselves or their kid, and it's going to give an absurd amount of value at the price point that it is. And I think that's all that really matters when it comes down to this console. While it might be a bit of a cop-out, this objectively worse console compared to, you know, the other options, I'm just happy it exists. Especially now where gaming has never been more expensive. The subscriptions are expensive. The components are absurdly expensive for PC. Even the Xboxes and PlayStations are all getting price hikes. This is still a more affordable option in the grand mix of things. So I'm happy to see it. But yeah, that's where I think the Series X stands in 2026. Compared to everything else, it's not going to perform as well. I don't think it has to though. And if you're just looking for a less expensive option for a good overall gaming and media experience, this is it. Now, it's probably because I'm a tired-ass dad, or I'm not the same person I once was, but I'm not really willing to talk myself out of a good time right now. And that's what this provides. So appreciate you guys hanging us at the end. Till next time.